All right, you are live, back live with Real Talk with Herschel, WKCG 99.1 on your FM dial. Again, the views expressed today on this show are not necessarily those of WKCG or TOPS. We have joining us via phone Judge William Alsup. He's a federal judge of the United States District Court of Northern District of California with a degree from Harvard, a master's in public policy from Harvard John F. Kennedy School of Government. In 1999, he was nominated to his position by President Bill Clinton and confirmed by the Senate of the United States District Judge in San Francisco. His book, which we will discuss today, is called One Over, Reflections of a Federal Judge on His Journey from Jim Crow, Mississippi. Judge Alsup, welcome to Real Talk and thank you for joining us. This is his book.
Good morning.
Good morning. Now, very interesting book. Antoine and I read your book. Your book, Won Us Over, uses your own stories to walk us through the white side of the color line during Jim Crow in the South. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, what experiences and observations that you formed to develop as not just a white man who ended up accepting the premises of the Civil Rights Movement, but someone who to representatively inoffensive and acceptable in the toxic South of racism that made up Jim Crow, Mississippi?
Born there in Mississippi, born and raised, and I came of age during the Civil Rights Movement. In 1963, I turned 18 years old, and of course that was the zenith of the Civil Rights Movement. So I had a front row seat, so to speak, from the perspective of the white community. Now, I need to make that clear. I had a front row seat of that historic enterprise. So that's the background. Born and raised, my mom and dad believed in segregation. They also did not believe in white supremacy. They in fact believed everyone was equal. However, they did believe that separate but equal was the correct standard. Of course, we know that got overruled in 1954 by the Supreme Court. But nevertheless, back in that era, that was still a fresh thing. So the basic story in the memoir is called One Over, W-O-N, over, and then one over to the right side of history. The basic story is how did a kid like that, growing up in a family like that, eventually see the light and get one over to the right side of history. And I don't mean much later in life, I mean back in the 60s itself. So what I tried to do in the story is to trace the influences that came to bear that caused my own thinking to shift. And there were a number of them, but let me just tell you what the basic conflict was. My mom and dad, they did believe in segregation, but they did not preach it. On the other hand, they also saw as fairness and decency, just common fairness and common decency. And so when you're a white kid growing up in that era, which is a terrible era, by the way, but you can grow up and you don't see it in its full glory. But slowly it begins to dawn on you that it's not fair and it's not decent. And the basic conflict is how did white kids growing up in that era in Mississippi, I guess you could say in Alabama too, how did they reconcile the fairness and decency of their mom and dad taught them with what they saw all around them if they paid attention? That's the basic concept. So let me stop there and let you ask another question.
No, well, that was going into my second question. So I was going to ask you as a child, how socially pervasive was the racism you saw, as a child in Jim Crow South? So you were starting to elaborate some.
Everyday fact of life. It started with the state laws. The state laws required segregation in schools and many other places. Then the churches preached it, the police enforced it, and the newspaper, the major newspaper in Mississippi, the NASF now is called the Clarion Ledger. And the Clarion Ledger had several columnists who regularly, every day, would rail on and on against the Kennedys and against integration of the schools and against the Supreme Court. We had the John Birch Society and General Edwin Walker, and we had what I would call political correctness, but it was the opposite of what it is today. The political correctness in that era was that you did not speak out, say anything to the contrary of what was going to do with the Mississippi way of life. And if you did speak out, you might lose your job, you might lose a contract, your kid might not get into the college they want, that kind of thing. So, yeah, there were many aspects of institutionalized fear, institutionalized propaganda that kept the segregation system in place. Now, let me just end with one thing. The biggest of all of these was denying blacks the right to vote. In theory, the white power structure then said, oh, of course everyone can vote, every citizen can vote. But if a black went down to register prior to the voting rights act, which was 65, if a black went down to register, I promise you, they would lose their job. And they might get kicked out of the whatever tenancy they had. So it was, and they might even lose their life. That should be very clear on that. So if you don't have the right to vote, you don't have the right to change things. The system stays in place. And despite the fact that Mississippi then, and even today, had more African Americans per capita than any other state of the Union, and prior to 1930, had a majority of African Americans in the state, and yet they couldn't vote, a very few, I'm going to say less than 1%. So it was thoroughly set up in institutional ways to keep blacks down, not let them vote, threaten them with loss of life or job, or housing, if they stepped out of line. And that was the Jim Crow system that I grew up in. Now, I've described it very vividly here, but as you're a kid growing up, a white kid to say growing up, most of your time you're doing the same kind of thing that most kids are doing. You're trying to get ready for school, you're trying to do the chores that you've been assigned, you're trying to get a job so you can earn some money for the household, and you're not paying attention as much as you should be. But eventually we did pay attention, and the thing that shined a light on it back there was the civil rights movement, which became more and more fervent, always peaceful, but more and more fervent as time went on. And so here we were, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids, and we were forced to think about it and to see what the problem was. If there hadn't been a civil rights movement, I kind of doubt that I myself would have paid as much attention to the problem as I should have. So, I've talked too long. I'm sorry. Let you.
No, not at all, sir. And I want to thank you for coming on. And went over, you described the impact that the March on Washington and figures like Martin Luther King and Medgar Evers had on you as a younger man. Can you explain what drew you to them and how it contrasted from the positions that were ingrained into you as a child?
Well, yes. In 1963, Medgar Evers was killed. It was the day that President Kennedy went on the air to announce that he would at the time with the Civil Rights Bill, which eventually became the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And he was gunned down at the front of his home in Jackson, my hometown, in June of 1963. Now, I had never met him. I had read about him, and in my diary, I said how tragic it was that he had been killed. I wrote that the very next day. I never met him, of course. I was just a young kid, and he was a famous civil rights leader. But he was our local civil rights leader in Jackson. I did later go, in 1964, I went down with my friend David Peter, who was my roommate in college, and we went to see Charles Everett at the NAACP headquarters in Jackson to express our condolences. That was a year later, and we wanted them to know that not every white kid growing up in Mississippi was against the civil rights movement. We wanted to know that there was some support, and we expressed our support. So I can't say that it was that personal interchange with those two that influenced me, but it was what they did. It was the courage that showed that it's shining a light on a serious problem. And with respect to Dr. King, I went to, in the summer of '66, I happened to be in Chicago at a student conference. And one of the organizers of the conference asked me and my roommate for that week if we wanted to go down to the south side of Chicago and hear Dr. King. Now, this had nothing to do with the program that I was there for, but it was just a lark of my own. And by this point, Martin Luther King was huge. He was just huge, bigger than life. And I said, yes, I'd like to go down there with you. So we got on the elevator, train, and went down to the south side, and went to the Liberty Baptist, maybe New Liberty Baptist Church in the south side, where he eventually came and spoke that evening. There must have been 1,000 people there. 1,000, and there was 15 white faces in that crowd, and I was one of those white faces. And I did get to hear one of his pulpit-type orations that he latched into at the end of his talk, which was to motivate the audience, the congregation, I should say, to get out there the next morning and do another march into, I believe it was Gage Park, but I'm not positive now, to protest the discrimination in housing. By the way, later on, in 1968, after he was assassinated, Congress did pass the Fair Housing Act. So that was the third in a series of important laws that was passed in the 60s, the Voting Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act, and of course the first one was the Civil Rights Act of 64. So that experience did, I felt very privileged to have seen him in person, sitting there in the pew about 2/3 of the way back, but being part of that experience. I just feel that did influence me all in the right direction. So he was a giant, and I still believe today, in my lifetime, I'm 74 now, I think he is the most important American that we have had in my lifetime, because of what he did for all the equal justice in our country, all people. And he would make a monumental difference in American trajectory. So he's greatly influenced me. But not because I do it, I would not. I would never pretend that I would shoulder to shoulder with one of those great people like that. I was just good. That kind of time.
All right. Well, let me ask you this as well, Judge. What made you choose Won Over as the title for your book, and how did being won over affect your feelings about the state and the community you came from? You know, given your adoption of a new view that ran contrary to its politics.
Yes. Well, the reason I named it One Over is because I think there are things in my earlier life, like in high school, that I'm ashamed of. For example, as I say in this memoir, even though my mom and dad told us never to use the N-word, and the colored Negro were the proper term. That's what my mom and dad said. And they were good about practicing that. But a few times, not often, but there were a few times that I didn't do a good job in high school. And then I look back on that with some shame now. By the time I got into college, which was 63, I had seen the light, so to speak, that was just a rotten thing to do, and I gave up on it. I didn't do that yet. That usage went out of my vocabulary and my brain. But I feel like there was a journey that I started more or less where my mom and dad started. And after the exposure to the civil rights movement and some personal things that I did for myself and that I am proud of, I feel like I was on the right side of history by the time I left in 1967. So yeah, I am a little hard. I'm not a little harsh. I tell it like it was, and I explain how rotten the system was and unfair. And yes, there will hurt a few feelings of the people who might still remember that and feel that way. So I must say that I've had a very strong, favorable reaction from the book in Mississippi, in modern Mississippi, which is many times better than it was back in that day. So I don't feel like I'm hurting too many feelings today, but it would have been if somehow this book could have gone back and been read by my classmates in high school. Yeah, I would have been very unpopular. And even today, I know some of my classmates, but I mean, some of my classmates have criticized the book. So I feel like there's still some of that old Mississippi struggling still, despite the fact that most of Mississippi has moved on.
Now, in the book, you make early in the book, you make a fascinating distinction between white segregationists and white supremacists. And I want to know, I'm curious about why you made that distinction and what you think that distinction is.
Yeah, I want to say first that I am not defending white segregation at all. I think history is rightly condemned white segregationists as well as white supremacists. So don't in any way think that I'm trying to defend it. But I did want to tell it like it was and how we saw it at the time. Simply put, the white supremacists, let me start with the white segregationists. The white segregationists, like my mom and dad, they believe in separate but equal. They would say, yes, all blacks are equal. Yes, they should be allowed to vote. But separate but equal is part of the Constitution. That's what they would say. On the other hand, the white supremacists did not even believe in the equal part. They believed that blacks were an inferior race, and that the Supreme Court has made a mistake of even selecting separate but equal. Now, of course, both of those are wrong. I'm ready to admit that. I believe that they were wrong. But at the time, that was a pretty important decision. For example, the people who did the murders and the Klan and the bombing, they were in the white supremacist group. And it was these people in the white segregationist group could vary anywhere from rabid people who were awful to all the way up to someone like the fictional character Atticus Finch in Film Officer. Now, if you read the book, it's probably read the movie, you see that Atticus Finch, even though we all admire him, he was a white segregationist, and he observed the customs of the white segregation community in Alabama in the 1930s. I've seen it recently, and I'll give you just one example, where he takes the cow, the housekeeper, black woman, old one evening. He gets in the front of the cart, and she gets in the back of the cart. That was one of the customs of that era, that black would never ride in the front seat. Because why? Because that would imply social equality. Now that is just terrible. I'm the first to tell you, I think that was a rotten thing. But I'm also telling you that the white segregationist group went all the way from the ragged people like George Wallace in your state to someone also in your state, fictional, Adequate Finch, who observed the customs of the white segregation. Now, to go back to my mom and dad did not believe in white supremacy. In fact, to the contrary, they said not many, I'm going to say more than one, all the races were equal. And in fact, they believed that when it came to churches, that God did not discriminate and that all people should be welcome at any church. So that was their view. Nevertheless, they felt when it came to schools, and when it came to other things that the state law said had to be segregated, they supported that. Well, as I say, fairness and decency was something else that they believed in and taught us, and in time, anyone who believed in fairness and decency was growing up in that era could see the conflict. It was not fair and decent to believe in any of that stuff. So I did make that distinction because it was one that if you had asked my mom and dad back at the time, or asked a lot of people, asked Adequate Finch to explain it back at the time, that's what they would have made that distinction. It's been lost to history, and rightly so, but at the time, I was trying to tell it like it was. That's the way it was for a white kid growing up at that time. Does that help?
Yes, sir, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate that answer. One thing about the book that, and this is kind of related to the previous question, one thing about the book that I kept being drawn back to was the undercurrent of violence that took place. It not only took place in Mississippi, which had things like, the State Sovereignty Commission, the Klan, the White Citizens Council, but it also, violence also took place as a consequence to desegregation efforts in sit-ins and whatnot, and many of the people who were responding violently in those sit-ins, I think they would fall in the white segregationist camp. So, and then one of the examples you gave, it seemed like, if a black person that sat in the front of the bus, a white segregationist may be moved to a white supremacist action as a consequence. And one of the things that I wanted to ask is that in the book, I'm very curious about in what way your intellectual and ideological journey as a white Southerner who ended up being won over from Mississippi, is that reflective of the way other whites interpret the same history?
I heard everything but the last question.
Okay, my apologies. In what way is your intellectual and ideological journey as a white Southerner from Mississippi reflective of the way other whites interpret the same history?
Well, I think at the time it was a very few. We don't have time on the show to get into the things that I'm most proud about, which was helping, not just helping, but being one of two leaders that got the first African American ever to give a speech at a so-called white college ever in Mississippi, and that took the threat of a lawsuit and a lot of adverse publicity from the Clarion Ledger and stuff about. I was Aaron Henry, came in January '67, and it took a lot of battling with Clarion Ledger and with the State Board of Trustees to accomplish that. So on both of that is to answer your question. We were in a small handful of white people at the time, white kids. I'm going to say one out of 20 maybe felt the way that we felt. Now, as time went on, I know some of those people down there that didn't agree with me. They got won over to the right side of history too, but it might have been in the 80s and the 90s. For example, the Civil Rights Act of '64 had a great influence on opening up jobs to African Americans. And a lot of people who previously didn't work with African Americans found, hey, these African American employees just like us. And so they got won over slowly to the right side of history. But that came 20 years later. And I don't think there were too many on the white side who could say truly that they were back in the 60s won over to the right side of history. One thing I do want to make a footnote on you're absolutely right when some of that violence that came about, like I think the Walgreens, not the Walgreens, but the sit-ins where blacks were beaten up. I have no doubt that the white sons and daughters of white segregationists were not just white supremacists, were involved in that kind of violence. I do think that when it came to killing, though, it was the white supremacists were the ones who did the murders. But there was violence. I don't mean to in any way imply that there weren't white people who believed in white segregation who would engage in violence, like throwing ketchup or hitting somebody with a placard or hitting him in the face with their fist. That kind of stuff happened. And, the sons and daughters of white segregationists were doing that. So I don't want to leave the impression that they were a peaceful group.
Okay, now that you mentioned, violence and killing, you mentioned that over the Christmas holiday in 1964, following the assassination of Medgar Evers, you went to the NAACP field office and met with his brother. What moved you to do that, and what did you take away from that meeting with his brother?
Well, there were two reasons. The first reason was that me and my roommate, we were on the sort of the new party of the Democrats, not that we were on the Young Democrat side. This was the Kennedy branch. And we wanted to go down and see if he would help support a judicial nominee that we thought would be a progressive candidate for the Court of Appeals. And we also wanted to ask him if he would come and be a speaker at Mississippi State, because we never had a black speaker in Mississippi State. But in addition to all of that, we wanted to express our condolences and to assure him that there were white kids right there in Jackson, Mississippi, who supported what he was trying to do. And I thought it was important that a white kid say that face to face. It was heartfelt. That's what we wanted them to know that.
Now, you've mentioned this a few times before, but I kind of want you to talk about, throughout your book, you note the rhetoric of the newspaper, the Clarion Ledger, and it takes a prominent role as a reflector and sometimes creator of the white consensus of the period. Can you describe what happened when the Clarion Ledger turned its attention to the YMCA and the Young Democrats in your state, particularly against your effort to bring in the first black speaker?
Yeah. It is hard for us now to imagine the influence that newspapers had then. We only had 3 networks on TV. And the networks provided news that it was 15 minutes a day, the national news, not the 30 minutes it is now. And so the newspapers were an important source of our information. And the ordinary person believed that, listen, if it's in print, and if somebody who is smart enough to get that job as a columnist to begin with is saying how bad the Kennedys are, many people in Mississippi would just believe it and read. And of course, it was always one side. So they would pick up the argument being made by a guy named Tom Etheridge, who was one of the columnists, the other one was Charles Hill, both of them extreme racists in my view. And the Mississippians would, I say white Mississippians, would read that and say, well, okay, yeah, the Kennedys are terrible. Oh, yeah, the Supreme Court is terrible. So that was a steady line. Well, now, fast forward to 1966 when we wanted to bring the first African-American ever to speak at any white college, and we got turned down by the state board of trustees. And me and Danny Cupid, my roommate, decided we would bring a lawsuit in federal court to challenge the. So I wrote a letter to the president of MSU, and he referred it to the board of trustees. And this was after he had turned us down, and after the board had turned us down. And I said, we're going to have to sue. We want a federal judge to decide this, not the state board. Well, eventually, at that point, I shouldn't say eventually, but there was immediately in the Clarion Ledger and in the Tom Etheridge column, several columns, I'm going to say 5 or 6, that picked up on this controversy of how these upstart kids in Mississippi State were challenging the authority of the president, and they're there to get an education, so why don't they just go and get their education and leave, and the communists behind this, it was that kind of, they would put liberal in quotes, and it was a bad name. So that event got a lot of adverse publicity in advance through the Clarion Ledger. On the other hand, the state board did back down on account of that letter I wrote and the threat of the lawsuit, and so Aaron Henry did come. Now, the campus newspaper was the Reflector. It had much less circulation. It was just limited to a small campus, whereas the Clarion Ledger was statewide and had 100,000 readers every day. But the Reflector was the exact opposite. The Reflector did support what we were trying to do, and it gave a lot of publicity to the event before it occurred because of the controversy. Anyway, it was amazing because when Aaron Henry did come and give that first historic speech, there were so many people who showed up. We had it staged in the auditorium of the YMCA, which would hold 400 people. We had 750 who wanted to come in. There was no way to get them in there. So at the last minute, the school let us move it over to the biggest auditorium on campus. So the entire audience got up, and everyone went over to the Lee Hall, which is the largest auditorium, where he gave the first speech ever by an African American, and at the end he had a standing ovation, I'm proud to say. It was very peaceful. There was no violence. There was no yelling by anyone. Nobody threw a brick. No one. It was exactly what a discourse ought to be in a time of great tumult, where most people in that audience probably disagreed with Aaron Henry, but they were polite and listened to what he had to say. They even gave him a standing ovation at the end, because everyone knew it was a historic moment. Anyway, to answer your question, the newspapers had undue influence, especially a statewide newspaper like Clarion Ledger had enormous influence and was one of the institutional bricks that kept the wall of segregation in place all those years in the Clarion Ledger.
All right. Well, thank you, Judge Alsup. Thank you so much for joining us here at Real Talk. The title of his book is One Over, Reflections of a Federal Judge on His Journey from Jim Crow, Mississippi. Is there anything else you'd like to say to our audience, Judge?
I thank you very much for this opportunity, and I hope some of your readers get a chance to take a look at the book. But even if not, I'm honored and privileged to have had a chance to speak with you. So thank you for that opportunity.
Well, thank you, Judge, and maybe we'll have you back on again sometime and get a little further into your book or some other writings.
All right, I'd love that. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, thank you. You're listening to Real Talk with Herschel here at WKCG 99.1 on your FM dial.